The chasing dash arrows symbol was created to close the loop on packaging waste, yet it mostly turned recyclable into a comforting label instead of a working system. This is Unintended Consequences, episode 85. In 1970, a 23-year-old student named Gary Anderson sketched 3 bent arrows inside a circle for a packaging industry contest in Los Angeles. The drawing was meant to show that used containers could become new ones, reassuring people that every bottle or carton had a future. Instead, the symbol spread across billions of items whose materials were never economically worth recovering at scale. The visual promise of return ran ahead of any calculation that compared collection costs, sorting labor, and the price of making the same item from fresh feedstock. Gary Anderson designed the mark while finishing architecture school. He was responding to a brief from the Container Corporation of America that asked for a symbol to promote paper recycling. The company had already built one of the first large-scale recycled paper mills and wanted a visual cue that would encourage consumers and municipalities to keep material flowing back to it. At the time, visible litter along highways and the first Earth Day celebrations made the problem feel urgent and solvable through better sorting and collection. Anderson's simple, reversible arrows captured the idea of a closed loop without requiring new infrastructure or changes in product design. The symbol was first used on recycled paperboard in 1970 and carried no promise about which resins or composites could actually be reprocessed. Its creators treated the visual cue as a prompt for collective action rather than a guarantee of technical feasibility. They assumed that once people saw the loop, they would supply the missing steps of consistent separation and steady demand for the output. By the mid-1980s, the symbol had been adopted by plastics manufacturers and appeared on bottles, tubs, and films, even though only PET and HDPE had reliable domestic markets. Municipal programs expanded rapidly after the 1987 voyage of the garbage barge, Mobro 4000, drew national attention to landfill shortages. Cities from Seattle to New York added curbside bins and printed the arrows on every container they collected. Industry groups promoted the label as evidence that packaging was being managed responsibly. Some states passed laws requiring the symbol on all rigid containers. Early tonnage figures from pilot programs showed rising collection rates, which proponents cited as proof the system worked. A few engineers inside resin companies privately noted that mixed bales would be difficult to sell once oil prices fell. Those cautions stayed inside technical meetings rather than reaching city councils or shoppers. The arithmetic of collection trucks, single-stream sortation lines, and bale shipping costs was treated as a detail that would sort itself out once volume increased. Collection volumes grew faster than reprocessing capacity, so most bales were shipped overseas, first to Taiwan and then to China. Labor costs there made hand sorting economical for a time. When oil prices dropped, virgin resin became cheaper than recycled material. The price of new polyethylene or polypropylene tracks crude oil feedstock directly, while recycled material still carries the fixed costs of collection routes, optical sorters, and washing lines that do not shrink when oil falls. Contamination rates in single-stream programs often exceeded 20%, turning entire loads into waste that landfills or incinerators still had to handle. One PVC pipe or one greasy pizza box can ruin a bale of PET that would otherwise sell. The symbol itself gave consumers no information about which of the 7 resin codes were actually accepted locally. People placed non-recyclable items in the bin in good faith. Those items jammed machinery or lowered the value of otherwise marketable bales by enough that buyers walked away. By the 2010s, estimates from industry audits suggested that only about 9% of plastic produced in the United States had ever been recycled. Yet the arrows continued to appear on nearly every package. The visual reassurance reduced pressure on manufacturers to redesign packaging or cut material use, because shoppers could feel they were already doing their part. The loop therefore operated as a one-way collection system for most resins. Waste that could not be sold was sometimes openly dumped or burned in receiving countries, adding to ocean leakage and air pollution far from the point of purchase. The original drawing had assumed that once material was gathered, the return leg would follow automatically. The economics of virgin production and the heterogeneity of real world waste streams broke that assumption at each step after the curb. China's 2018 national sword policy banned most plastic imports and forced Western cities to confront the gap between what they collected and what processors would accept. Some programs dropped the symbol from bins or added clearer instructions. Others introduced deposit return systems that raised recovery rates for PET bottles above 80% in places like Oregon and Michigan by attaching a refund value that covers the cost of clean, segregated material. A handful of major brands began testing mono-material packaging that matches existing sortation equipment, though these remain a small fraction of total output. The original symbol still appears on products with no domestic market, preserving the original mismatch between label and infrastructure. New chemical recycling proposals have emerged, yet their energy requirements and yields remain uncertain at commercial scale. A symbol that signals possibility without specifying conditions can mask the difference between collection and actual recovery. When the cost of processing exceeds the price of new material, volume alone does not create a market. Decision makers therefore benefit from asking what physical and economic thresholds must be met before a reassuring label is applied. The same question applies today to carbon offset icons, compostable claims, and any other shorthand that lets complex systems appear solved by a single graphic. That's unintended consequences for today. If this episode gave you something to think about, share it with a friend who'd appreciate the story. Subscribe wherever you listen, and we'll be back tomorrow with another case. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at Nera Network. Links in the show notes. Quick tip from the network. Try the Do Positive Pod next. Good news in science and tech, plus one concrete action you can take. Every Nera Network show is free at neranetwork.com. Want the written briefing with source links? Each show keeps a summaries page on neranetwork.com, scannable, dated, and free. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.